Integration feels like an exchange and a dance. There's the in-breath, there's the out-breath in relationship, there's the gap at the end of each that isn't nothing. It's part of the whole context of this weaving. My awareness holds, I'm held by.
I had an extraordinary vision right towards the end of humanity as the hungry caterpillar, and that caterpillars have this voracious appetite. They just eat while they're caterpillars, and that in some way, that caterpillar is like our extractive economy. It's just eating.
Mm-hmm.
And could it be true that that is really kind of the evolutionary process, that the eating is happening, and that, you know, maybe the chrysalis is being somehow formed, and this is what the goo feels like. This is sort of what it feels like to be metamorphosizing, or whatever the right word would be.
Digested.
Yeah.
It's time to digest all that's been eaten. It would be digested.
And you know, the caterpillar goes into stasis with the cocoon because it gets so bloated it can't really move anymore.
So, you know, maybe in terms of, you know, an evolutionary impulse there, you know, I wouldn't put indigenous ways of living, that doesn't fit in the caterpillar. But so something about Western civilization, empire building, colonialism, that yeah. And that and the sense of, yeah, and that when you're going from one form through a goo phase before another form emerges, we don't have any training for that.
There's no map.
Yeah, it's like nobody ever has described what that could feel like if I'm like a, what did Alexander call it? If I'm like a plank length, you know, imaginal something, looking for, I'm an imaginal disc, you know, trying to, you know, attract to me or be attracted to the forthcoming imaginal cell. And that this is a feeling, this is a felt sense in my body.
Mm-hmm.
That is, well, I just have to go to kind of Buddhist terminology now. It's unpleasant sensation arising.
Mm-hmm.
And to just try to be with that rather than make it feel better somehow. To just be with the unpleasant sensation arising of, yeah. And something around this belief in urgency. I have to let the sense of urgency dissipate for myself. It doesn't serve me to feel that it's urgent, that there's anything urgent happening. That is not helpful to me. Hmm.
I'm in the dark.
Yeah.
Nothing changed. And we are seeking to be in the light, so it's perfectly appropriate. Something that touched me, there's a great podcast. It's called How to Survive the End of the Earth. Many of you know that because Adrienne Brown, I'm going to say her name incorrectly, wrote the book Emergent.
Adrienne Marie Brown.
Adrienne Brown has written several amazing books, but in the podcast she talked about all that you touch you change, all that you change changes you, the only lasting truth is change, God, change.
That's Octavia Butler.
It is Octavia Butler, yes.
Uh-huh.
But she talked about it in the podcast. A lot of her work comes from Octavia Butler and that influence. Mm-hmm. And so I'm sure this has been mentioned or had been said, but where it is interesting me or applying to my week of integration in our conversation was just that, you had talked earlier, Heather, about the pace is not for you, what's happening now, but yet you have all this training, all this learning, all this education that's so valuable to this time. So, and just some of the other things that we talked about, our bodies are of this earth. We are all interconnected, but all of the things we have been drawn to or that has trained us or who has made us who we are is valuable at this time and needs to be utilized. It's just a matter of how energetically that is expressed. And I think getting comfortable with the unknown, which is symbolic of death and darkness here, and getting comfortable with our gifts and who we are and what we have to share, and knowing that our bodies are going to guide us and having that deeper level of trust that we have been trained, that we already know who we are, we already know what we must do, and that we will be guided as well as we through our intelligence, but also through our collective intelligence, and leaning into that and trusting that God has changed and trusting that we have the tools that we need and we will create the new ones that we need. It makes space for the indigenous wisdom to evolve in a contemporary way. It makes space for us to evolve outside or inside of this cocoon, since we don't know if we are yet to live through to be the butterfly. But I know for certain one thing, that all of our wisdom stays in the collective and the things that we've learned and we've given to the collective. And so we stand on shoulders of giants. Giants will stand on our shoulders. And so knowing whatever place that we're meant to be or however we express our wisdom or what role we play, if we trust the body, trust our connection to the earth, the lineage that we come from, and where we are going, where we'll be better off. But that's what I was just thinking.
There's Bayo Akomolafe is a Nigerian writer and doctor turned shaman. He's been saying times are urgent, so let us slow down.
Yes.
Yeah.
And there's like an hour and 20-minute long interview with him with that heading, but I just found an 8.5 minute video too that maybe I'll try to watch later. I'm having trouble watching hour-and-a-half long things unless it's mindless entertainment or MSNBC, God help me, which is rambling in the background now.
Can you put that in the chat for us, please?
I can, yes. So I had this weird experience while we were tuning in to Chris Matthews and his panel coming up from the living room downstairs. And this talk about integrating, that's such a different space, but one that I'm in a lot and drawn to. The caterpillar doesn't always succeed, I think, or the butterfly doesn't always emerge. Someone gave us 2 monarch butterfly chrysalises last year, and one of them hatched, and we let it loose. The other one didn't make it. Didn't.
Mm.
Mm.
Bio's talking a lot about death. He did a whole workshop called Vulture, and wanted us to learn how to go feral.
Ah.
The other thing that's showing up for me is
Oi, eu sou a Maria Clara.
I'm sorry.
That was me clicking on the link and stopping it.
Okay. Oh, and you just sent me something about Elizabeth Satoris.
Yes.
Right, and she's of course the person. Well, she's one of the people that's popularized this whole metaphor of the butterfly, right?
Yeah.
That's where
Yeah.
I first saw it. Was her talking about it, I think, and maybe Bruce Lipton too. But I've been talking. I've met her. She was introduced to me by somebody else who's part of Now What, Inger Meta Stenseth, and she's been very gracious. We had a call yesterday and another one just before Now What started, and planning some others. I want to create a little salon for her to connect her up with people that she might think of as her peers in a small group conversation. But what strikes me about her now, she's pretty much convinced we're headed for an ice-free world. We're headed for something like whatever the Jurassic period, whenever it lasts. Earth has been like that before, just not with humans on it, right?
Mhm.
And so she's quite clear that life will continue, and yeah, she's got no blinders on about the sixth mass extinction. So life as a superorganism, Gaia, continues, but we're going to lose a lot between now and then, in her view, including a lot of people. And what's remarkable is she's not in any kind of denial about that. It doesn't seem to me, but she's also quite buoyant. It's like, maybe I don't know her history. I'm sort of curious. Has she been spending a lot of time in this framework of the butterfly is going to emerge, and we're working towards that, and this is this metaphor of this more beautiful world where we stop being these voracious, greedy, all-consuming caterpillars. And her big line was, if you want butterflies, don't step on caterpillars. Right? That was sort of her punchline with the whole thing, I'm remembering now. Anyway, I'm curious if she's not thinking that, it's like, well, the caterpillars are getting stepped on, or the butterflies are stillborn, or maybe that wasn't even the right metaphor, it turned out, I don't know. Or maybe it's still a butterfly to her. It's just, not the butterfly we thought it was going to be back when we thought we could prevent catastrophic climate change. I don't know. I'm struck
Well,
by her buoyancy, though, and Annalise Smitsman similarly.
oh yeah. Oh yeah. And if we can stand in that point where you've got all the urgency and you've got the need to slow down, all the dualities, all the polarities, we can stand and hold the tension of those, larger than those, and not be pulled only into one, but consider our capacity to feel into and be shown what else we can live into, or be shown. It might be a drastic being shown. I mean, Uncle Ungangok from Greenland had such joy. I mean, he also had such grief, as he shared with us in Scotland in April, and has been sharing for many years about his way of life going. The ice is crying. The ice is melting. But what else, when the land you're standing on is melting and your whole way of life is going, what else is there to do but enjoy every moment here together that's left? Do we finally, are we finally brought to this, that we don't have all this eating and consuming to do when we can't anymore? Are we brought to each other finally, and our senses, our actual sensing and enjoying this world? Perhaps that's the opportunity. An opportunity.
When a lot of people go through spiritual awakenings, they often do so after everything is burned down, whether it be a relationship, a job, or a home. you know, that is where the magic happens for many people, is they let go of all the identities. They release what the ego was, all the different parts of it. And there are many people who believe that there are parallel lives, that there are other planes, that there are other universes that we live in. And so the parts of us that we think are here have a life to live elsewhere other than this planet. It depends on what you believe, which is all, you know, individual. But what we do with our time and how we do with our time, I think we can, like many of the wise indigenous masters that were invited to the event have shown us that you can do both at the same time, that you can have great joy, great presence, great appreciation for what is now at all times, and still make space for that grief simultaneously or in between, rapidly or for long periods. It's all okay, however you let that unfold.
Well, I was at a Joanna Macy worked at Reconnect's workshop on Sunday, and there was a woman who spoke about having lost her son in his 20s just recently, like a year ago or so, and how strong that grief was still with her, and that in going through that grieving, she's been able to feel joy like she never has in her life as well. And that's, you know, Heather and I did a whole thing on this actually in that Whidbey Winter Gathering in 2013 too, in the wake of the shooting here in Newtown at Sandy Hook School. So I think there's all kinds of there's some ancient wisdom around the connection between grief and joy. Actually, there's a song I thought we might play to close this with. I wasn't even thinking. It's interesting how these things happen, right? It was sort of just stuck in my head, and the tune is kind of haunting, and the title is Bridge, and that seemed to fit with integrating. But I had picked it in my head even before you named the integration theme, Liza. And now I'm looking at the lyrics, and it's really spot on. So there are the lyrics, and I'll play it if with your permission, unless there's something more people want to say before I do that.
into the gloom.